Welcome to this Vermed webinar. My name is Alexander Schacht, and we are here today to speak about 9 strategic insights you get from a great medical affairs statistician. So before we dive into it, and let me just wait, maybe a couple of seconds more so that everybody can get into the room. By the way, this webinar is also recorded, so if you would like to recommend it later to other people, then feel free to do so. All our webinars are published on our homepage, so if you check out vermed.co.uk/webinars with an S at the end, then you get to a homepage where all these webinars from the launch and commercialization business unit are. So let's get started. Statisticians are not invited to advisory boards with key opinion leaders or KOLs or key thought leaders or whatever the abbreviation is. That was the sentence that I heard early on in my career when I started as a statistician in the medical affairs or post-marketing area. That was actually before the time when, we had lots of these HTA discussions. So you can probably guess from that how old I am, and maybe also from my lots of hair that I have. But that was kind of at the time when I entered very much across the industry what happened. Now, over some time, I built some more relationship with the physicians that were running these advisory boards. And at the first advisory board, I was invited to at least sit as a side table, so to say, where the note taker was sitting, I was sitting next to that person. And because I was able to answer a couple of questions, the next advisory board, I was invited to sit at the main table. And the discussions were really good, and feedback from key opinion leaders was really good. And over time, I got more and more involved into these advisory boards, up to the point where I was having discussions with the physicians that was driving these about the agenda. What kind of topics should be discussed? What are the challenges? What is the best format? And was presenting together with others during these advisory boards and leading discussions during these advisory boards. And that is a story that helps you to illustrate how different help from statisticians can be. It can be someone that just sits outside of the room and is there in case you need help, that basically just provides some tables beforehand, maybe gets after the advisory board some kind of request to do some further analysis, and that's it. Or you can have a statistician that is an integral part of the overall process, that helps you to stand out from the crowd, helps you to have a very, very good experience with key customers, such as key opinion leaders, and that is really a partner in all of that. Now, where's this experience coming from? Well, I have about 20 years of experience in this area. I started in about 2000 in the industry, worked across 3 different large pharma companies. Most of the time I worked in launch and commercialization, and because of that I have published quite a lot of papers. I've done HTA submissions around the globe and worked in all the different levels in terms of statistical leaderships, in affiliates, in regional organizations like European international organizations, or also on a global level. And all these come with different challenges. I also work quite a lot with lots of other statisticians across the industry, because I'm, as a side note, also doing a podcast for statisticians. I talk to statisticians across the industry quite a lot. And there's a couple of words that come up when people speak about statisticians quite a lot. So if you're a statistician, maybe you can write some kind of things into the chat about what are the words that describe statisticians, or the words that hear others talk about statisticians. Yeah. So if you're not a statistician, you can write about what you kind of think about statisticians, how you would describe them. If you're a statistician, you can write down kind of what are others that have talked about you as a statistician. Okay, I'll quickly type that away. So let's see. Let's get that poll out. Okay. So where's the, can we close that poll and then see what people have wrote? Wow, are you statistician? Always guideline conformed, detailed and thorough. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different words that describe statisticians. And I know statisticians, how they describe themselves. I just last week was at a stats conference, and there was a physician speaking about statisticians. And he was describing two stereotypes of statisticians. One that is pretty common: statisticians that talk in statistics language to non-statisticians, statistics that present tables instead of figures, statisticians that are hard to work with, yeah, because they maybe are no-sayers. Everything is kind of, as just said, guideline conform, always kind of these kind of things. And then there are statisticians that, you know, that really want to be different, that want to say, instead of saying no, saying yes, and that also, you know, if we move forward here, that has these strengths, these limitations, things like that, instead of just saying, no, you can't do that. And that is what great medical affairs statisticians are. They can help you to get to an answer, to get to some results, despite maybe certain limitations. So let's talk about 3 key areas in which you should expect great help in. The first one you should get big help in is strategic understanding. The second one is comprehensive data insights. And the third one is shaping the future. And we will go through all these different areas now step by step, and I will talk about them and give you a little bit of an insight in what does that mean: strategic understanding, comprehensive data insights, and shaping the future. So if we think about Strategic understandings. That really covers 3 different areas. There's first the compound or the therapeutic area strategy. It a little bit depends on how you're organized. Many companies are organized kind of teams by compound, and then you need to have this compound overview. Or sometimes you have multiple compounds in one therapeutic area or indication, and then things are more organized by therapeutic area. The second area is the competitive landscape. So what's happening outside of your company? What do others do? But also kind of what is the playing field that you operate in? And in terms of playing field, there, of course, is one of the key stakeholders are also payers. What are all the different payer requirements across the globe? Or if you're mostly working in an affiliate or in a region within that area. So it could be about what is needed to be successful in, payer negotiations in the US. What is needed to be successful in Germany, in the UK, in Australia, in South Korea, in Canada, and many, many other places. And also, when is it needed? All these kind of different things are really important and require strategic understanding. Because great data doesn't necessarily imply success. I've worked on really, really great compounds, some of which had outstanding success, and they had became blockbusters and really, really good. Some others were really great from an evidence perspective, but they weren't getting to the patient. They weren't, delivering on a population, on a patient level, what they were supposed to do, although they could. And that is because data doesn't speak for itself. Tables don't speak for itself. Numbers don't speak for itself. What you need to do is you need to make this data stand out. You need to make sure that people have some kind of, deeper understanding for it. If you have evidence that should stand out, then you also need to use methods, approaches that really stand out. And here's an example of that. So this is taken from a publication that was done by these people here. Some of them are former colleagues of mine. And this is actually a small video that is part of the electronic appendix of this paper. And so let's move forward to this. Why doesn't it play? Oh, okay. Let's move forward here. Okay. Let's stop here for a moment. Okay, so what do you see here? You see here on the horizontal axis, so you can see, let me see, how does that work? Laser pointer, yeah. So on the horizontal axis, you can see the baseline PASI total score. And the PASI total score is describes the symptoms of psoriasis patients. Low score means low symptoms, high score means a lot of symptoms. And it's basically a summary of how your psoriasis covers your body, how thick it is, how red it is, how much scaling you have. And so if you have here the kind of 50, 60, then that basically means your more or less your whole body is covered in thick, scaly red plaques. Most of the patients are in this area between 10 and 30 in the study, and kind of below 10 or below 12 actually here. That was an exclusion criteria, so mild patients are actually excluded from the study. So now we can actually, and each of these patients in the study is represented by a dot. On the right-hand side, you have the ixekizumab patients. This is a new treatment. Etanercept patients is an older treatment. That's on the left-hand side. And on the vertical axis, you have also the PASI total score, and that describes how the severity is post-baseline. Now let's do the following. Let's play that here for a minute. Okay, so you can see what happens after about a week here. You can see that after about a week, there's a lot of patients that have already improved. Yeah, there's some patients that even have improved beyond these 75 or 90% bar. Whereas on the old treatment, yes, there's some patients that actually have deteriorated. They are across, above this line, which basically means that it's the same as baseline. And there's a lot of patients, that rarely any patients that hits this kind of early success. Now let's see what's going on later. So what's happening further? You can see how, more and more patients on the ixekizumab arm drop down and pretty much stay where they are. Yeah. So as soon as they reach this, green areas, which is the desired area, they actually stay there. And that pretty much all the patients end up there. Whether here on this side, on the left-hand side, there's a lot of patients that only marginally improved, and some patients even deteriorated. And some patients, improve and then move up again. And so this data, when that was presented to physicians, and it was actually co-created together with physicians, it stood out. It was kind of, people were saying, wow, that's really an interesting way to look into this data. I see much more in these kind of data. I was seeing physicians that kind of were looking into this and looking into it again and again and again and again, and seeing some kind of new things in it again and again. And great medical affairs statisticians now understand not only how to analyze the data, but also how to communicate it in such a way that key features of this data really stand out. And also that people can connect with the data. So by showing here, for example, individual patient level data, you can tell stories like, imagine this is your patient. Yeah, and this patient is at the starts here, is completely covered in red, thick, scaly plaques. And after a couple of weeks, is completely free. Yeah, clear skin. And you can see that patient is not an outlier. It's actually representative of most of the patients. Yeah, of course, not all patients, but pretty much nearly all patients have a really, really good response. And great medical affairs statisticians do exactly that. They help you to explain these things and help you to communicate them well. Great medical affairs statisticians also help you with the overall strategy. Yeah, what needs to be true to win? Have a good discussion about what is needed there. What is possible with your data? What could be possible if you need new data? Alternative analysis that you could do to get to it. Also, you can have a deep discussion about what are the key challenges, the key opportunities. Where have you data that can, be shaped in such a form that it stands out, that it tells a really, really good story? What is your competition doing? How do you differentiate there? Also, I've seen statisticians that help you to manage more successfully your internal and your external stakeholders. Yeah. So help with processes, help with all these kind of different things. And that's what great medical affairs statisticians do. Speaking about competition, of course, we all know that we are not alone here in the market. There's always competition. Maybe it's direct competition, maybe it's competition that is before us, maybe there's competition that is behind us, or maybe, sometimes you have these kind of head-to-head, races where two compounds, two products, two companies more or less compete kind of on a pretty plain level field, and who can better explain to people the effects of the drug, better kind of speak about the side effects, better speak about all the different features, better speak about the differentiations. And one thing that statisticians can do really well is they can provide you unique insights into the competition. Look at the competitors' evidence. What are their strengths? What are their limitations? What do they, have in their data that they try to hide maybe? Or what are the data that is maybe overstated? Or sometimes even completely wrong? Yeah. Have a look into what is also happening outside of your direct competition, because there's always these third-party disclosures. Yeah, maybe there's an association that does a review of a class of treatment and looks into this and compares all of them. Or maybe there's a payer that provides some guidelines, or some kind of association provides guidelines and does comparison. Or maybe there's just, some academic group that publishes about a comparison of all the treatments in your area. I've seen a lot of panic in companies when that happens. Oh, Association XYZ, the British Association of XYZ has published these data, and our compound doesn't look good in it. What do you do about it? Well, work with statisticians so that you can understand what's really going on there. What are the strengths? What are the limitations? What opportunities do you get from these kind of things? Another thing is you can look into what will happen in the future. If there's a study going on, nowadays, that is not, people know about these things. Things get published, things are on clinicaltrials.gov. The community knows about what's going on in terms of research. You can work with a statistician, and the statistician can make you aware about how likely is it that competitors will have a certain readout? What does it mean? Yeah. When will it happen? Yeah. At which conference likely will that be presented? Another important thing is the fourth hurdle. And yes, to get regulatory approval, you need to have quality, efficacy, and safety. So 3 hurdles. But nowadays, in most of the markets, you have a 4th hurdle. Yeah? In all the European markets, you need to get over this payer hurdle. And in the US, you don't have a national system or subnational system, but still payers play a crucial role. And if you don't get past the big insurance companies or the big, pools of insurance companies, most of the patients will not get the medication. So that is really, really one key part. And most of these discussions with payers are about evidence. And who are the specialists in evidence? Exactly, statisticians. And great medical affairs statisticians know these things. They know what will be needed when. When we get to launch or launch plus 1 year, we launch plus 2 years, what will we need in terms of evidence? Okay, we'll need that evidence. For that evidence, we'll need this kind of study. That kind of study will take so long. So that's why we need to start now to do these kind of things. They understand kind of the trade-offs between what is essential and what is optional evidence. What is something that we must have, otherwise, we don't get any entry, or what are the things that are nice to have, things that would help us, maybe, and you can have a discussion about, okay, that would be nice to have, but is it worth the additional costs, the additional time, the additional resources? Or could it also backfire, for example? And all of these, of course, play into the strategic evidence plan. Strategic is part of the strategic evidence plan, and it is really strategic. You need to have a really good understanding of your compound strategy, of the competition, of all the different things that are going on, where are the different channels, all these kind of different things. And all these different things that I just talked about very often are reflected in this strategic evidence plan and in the associated communication. Now, the second big area that I want to talk about is comprehensive data insights. And there are, again, 3 important things. The first, it's about the knowledge about existing evidence. The second is easy access to this data or evidence. And lastly, an overview of all data sources. And what all means, I'll come to that in a moment. So, does your company actually know what it knows? My perception is mostly not. Because for most compounds, over time, you have so many studies, so many analyses, that people lose an overview. And maybe there's just one person, very often a statistician, that has really an overview of all the different things. Yeah? But a great medical affairs statistician will work a little bit like a librarian. They help you to get an overview of all the existing analysis, inform you about the gaps in the analysis, and find the analysis, similar to a big library, like you can see here. Yeah, imagine all these books in the library is an analysis, is a table, is a figure, it's a listing somewhere for one study, for another study, for particular sub-study, for whatsoever. Yeah. And great statisticians know about all these. They can find these kind of things and get you to that. Now, the point in getting to it, that often looks like this. Yeah? How long does it get you to some new analysis or existing analysis? I've very often seen that, it's like standing in a traffic queue or traffic jam. There's inappropriate resources. It takes forever to get a new analysis. And there are insufficient resources. Yeah, I've talked to so many statisticians just last week. And one of the main things is, well, we can't, help all the affiliates, for example, because we don't have the resources. I don't even want to ask them, what kind of additional analysis they need, because I will not have the resources to actually perform them. Yeah. So that is where great statisticians have the appropriate resources and really good processes to turn that around really, really fast. The other thing is, great medical affairs statisticians leverage these interactive data visualizations to make things really easy. Very often, you just want to know a certain number. Yeah, how many, don't know, female older patients do we have in study XYZ? Well, of course, you can, follow the whole process, create a request for the table, do the table, all these kind of different things. Or you have these data visualizations set up. They are interactive, easy to use, always accessible, and customized to your specific area, where you then just do, okay, let's quickly click these different things. In many cases, that's completely sufficient. And you can say, oh, we have 5 patients in here. Do you think that's sufficient to do some kind of further research? And then you say, no, I think 5 is not enough. If we would have had 50, then probably yes. Yeah. That is where great processes come into play. Okay, next poll now. How satisfied are you within your organization with getting new analysis? Okay, so very dissatisfied, somewhat neutral, somewhat satisfied, or very satisfied. Just tick a box and tell me what you think. Okay. First polls come in. If you're currently multitasking, come back. Answer the question, how satisfied are you with getting new analysis? Currently, we have 50% on somewhat dissatisfied and the other 50% on somewhat satisfied. I've worked for different companies, and even within companies, you can have these differences. Yeah, so maybe in one area like oncology, it's working really well. And in another area, I don't know, neuroscience, it takes forever. Yeah. The bigger the company, very often the more heterogeneous the processes are. Okay. Yeah. So somewhat dissatisfied, somewhat satisfied. Yeah, I think that's maybe the key solution to it. Okay. Speaking about all data, leveraging all data. Well, of course, when we think about statisticians in the pharmaceutical industry, we always first think about clinical studies. Yeah, and of course, when you think about your strategic evidence plan, when you think about publications, when you think about promotional data, clinical trials play a very, very crucial role in it. And post hoc analysis of clinical data, of clinical trials, play an important part of it. But there's more. And great medical affairs statisticians not only look into the clinical trial data, but they also look into data that's coming from other sources. First, of course, real-world data. Well, everybody talks about real-world data, but there's actually a quite big area in terms of that. By the way, be aware that very different people, when they speak about real-world data, they think about very, very different things. And especially the FDA has a very, different definition for what is real-world data. Because in the FDA definition, it can even come from clinical trials, whereas most other definitions, people would think like it's observational data. So real-world data can be prospective observational studies. Yeah, like, for example, you just observe how patients with a new schizophrenic episodes are treated, or how patients with a new depressive episode are treated, or how patients with neuropathy are treated, or whatsoever. Yeah. Or it can be retrospective. where you look into what's more called secondary data use. So you don't collect the data for your analysis, but you have collected it for some other things, like claims data. Yeah, insurance companies don't collect these because they want to mine the data. No, they collect these so that they know how the finance works and these kind of things. Registries is another thing. Another thing are non-interventional studies, primary data collection studies or chart reviews. Another big area is literature data. There's a whole, world within science that only cares about that, where you do meta-analysis of existing publications, where you do network meta-analysis of existing publications. So network meta-analysis means you're not looking into the treatment difference of two treatments, but lots of treatments. And so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, how many treatments, and you have look into all different combinations of differences. Or you do matching adjusted indirect comparison, where you basically have on one side patient level data and on the other side population level data, and now you match your patient level data onto the population level. So you do as if you would have run your study not in your own population, but in the population of the published clinical trial. But there's also other sources that we and the medical affairs and HTA area can work on. There's data from surveys, even kind of social media surveys. There is, you can integrate expert opinions, ask lots of different experts on something and integrate that as source data. Or patient preferences, a really, really big topic where you can get insights on what is really important. Maybe there's a couple of different side effects that are happening across the different compounds. There's insomnia, there's pain, there's diarrhea. Well, all of these are unpleasant, but what are the most bothersome ones? What really impact the patient, and to how much? That is studies that are patient preference studies, and there's a couple of different designs on that. So good medical affairs statisticians know about all these kind of different things and then can pick the right tool to answer your question. And not just always think about, we run a clinical trial and that costs a fortune and will take 3 years to get the answer. When you need the answer in, 2 weeks. What can you do in 2 weeks? What can you do in 2 months? What can you do in 2 years? So that is really important. You can think about it as a toolbox. And the more tools you have, the more data tools you have, the more data sources you have, the better you can answer questions. Think of myself. Well, my toolbox in my basement is rather limited. There's of course screwdrivers and hammer and things like that. And if I do something, it doesn't look perfect. But my neighbor, has all these different tools, and of course is also much better trained in these. When he does something, it looks professional, and that is here the same. An amateur medical affairs statistician will only think about a couple of different things and has a limited toolbox. A great medical affairs statistician has all these data at hand, all these different analysis techniques at hand, and can therefore help you much, much better in a strategic way. Okay, last area I want to talk about is shaping the future. Now, there's again 3 areas in this third area that I'm talking about. The first is anticipation of future needs. What will you need in terms of evidence? How likely will you need it? Second is fit for purpose analysis approaches. Things that, get the most out of your data. And the last is optimal solutions and internal support. What that in detail means, I'll come to in a couple of minutes. So let's think about a specific scenario that happens quite often. Your competitor presents phase 3 results. What usually happens is, oh no, panic. That looks so good. That's a side effect. Is that relevant? What do we do? Lots of people talking to each other within the company, and a lot of activity, a lot of buzz, but often with very, very little coordinated action. And very often, the people that don't know about the data speak to other people that don't know about the data. Yeah, and that can create a lot of panic, confusion, misunderstanding, and for sure a lot of distraction on what is really, really important. Or you can be in a situation where you're prepared. You have talked together with your statisticians through all the different scenarios. You have your indirect comparisons in place. Yeah. By the time the phase 3 data from the competition comes out, you just plug it into your indirect comparison and directly say, well, yeah, it looks good, but actually not as good as on kind of plain sight, because they have placebo response is bigger. They have, populations that is less severe. They have these kind of all these different features. You can have a training and frequently asked question document in place where you go through all the differences, for example, in terms of design of your study compared to the other. You have a communication plan in place where in simple terms for certain things are discussed. Don't know. That study used MMRM and the other study used LOCF. What does that actually mean? Yeah, so that people that need to know across the company, from the global lead medical affairs physician to the MSLs in Greece or in Turkey or in Brazil, know about these kind of different things and can speak confidently about it with their customers, with their key opinion leaders, with their payers, whatsoever. Yeah, and maybe be even speaking to them about the competitor data before the competitor speaks to them about it. Because very often I've seen companies are not that good in preparing, having a cascade in terms of how they disclose data. So think about that scenario. How satisfied are you with your statistical support to manage such competitor disclosures? Okay, we take the same categories like before: very dissatisfied, somewhat neutral, somewhat satisfied, very satisfied. Okay, if you're just multitasking, come back to me now. Somewhat dissatisfied, neutral. Doesn't seem overwhelmingly positive here on the poll. Okay, so what to do? Start your indirect comparisons and network and meta-analysis now, so you're prepared in the future. Think about what are the studies that you need, both interventional, so clinical trials, as well as non-interventional studies, observational studies. that you need to have in place to have the right evidence at the right time. Yeah. I worked on compounds that had really, really great data, but they had, these key head-to-head studies not in place at the right time, and therefore launches were delayed by a year. Or, they didn't invest in further real-world evidence research. So then when there was a renegotiation happening for payers, or other compounds were coming into the market, they didn't have any evidence to really move forward and be successful in the market. The next part in terms of shaping the future is fit-for-purpose analysis. Now, there's data and there are analysis. And data is like, in some sense, like a gold mine. And your analysis tools are the tools that how you best kind of get empty the gold mine or, mine it. The better your tools, the more fit for purpose they are, as I described earlier, the more you can make sure that you are able to emphasize key messages by using different analysis, by using various populations. Let's say you want to show your drug works really, really fast. Well, there's one way to show it. There's other ways to show it. You can look into different perspectives of showing it, and through that, more or less tell the same story from different perspectives. And that, of course, helps you to make sure people really get what you say about the efficacy of a drug. You can create, innovative analysis using machine learning, and you can communicate much more effectively, like what we have seen with the animated scatter plot at the beginning. Great fit-for-purpose data visualization make a big, big difference. And when I mean fit for purpose, it means it needs to fit to the specific data and message part. It needs to fit to the audience. If you speak to physicians, it's different than you speak to the payers. It's different than you speak to regulators, or to patients anyway. And it depends on the channel. If you have something, if you look on something on an iPhone, that is very different to what is presented at a conference at a big screen. It's yet different to what is printed on a paper in a document. It also depends on if there's a presenter that explains these things, like I did with the data visualization earlier, or if it needs to stand on its own because someone looks at it on a laptop, on a other device, or reads about it in a report. These kind of things play a big role. So fit for purpose means it takes into account all these different things, and it doesn't mean you have done the figure once for the regulators or for the payers or for the paper, and then you just copy it over and over and over and over again. That's bad. So, how satisfied are you with the data visualizations you get from your statisticians? Same 5-scale category Likert scale, very dissatisfied to very satisfied. And we are approaching the end of the webinar quite soon. So a couple of more minutes. How satisfied are you? Somewhat satisfied. Okay, a couple of more maybe coming. Okay. When I talk to people, I see a pretty dramatic difference between the qualities that I see, for example, in the media, in the BBC, the New York Times, or even what I see in promotional material to what I see coming out of statistical departments. There's a huge opportunity for statisticians to add value. And if you're a non-statistician, you should expect statisticians to provide that great value. Another thing that makes great medical affairs statisticians stand out is they are also great leaders. They help you to work really, really effectively. Yeah. Leaders I don't mean it in a sense of being supervisors, but being influencers, being people that can turn, come up with ideas and turn these ideas into practice, that find ways to influence and to move forward teams. Yeah. For example, they help you to find additional resources. They just not sit there and say, well, I don't have, the money for it, the people for it, whatsoever. But they help you get that. Yeah. They help you to prioritize and organize all the different work. Yeah. Lots of statisticians are very, very structured, but great medical affairs statisticians also know what will happen. Yeah, and help you to structure these kind of things. Like I said earlier with, the phase 3 readout from the competition. Anticipate that, make a plan for it, help you put these plans into action. Create synergies and improve processes. One of the things we also talked about is having good processes for creating new analysis. Yeah, there might be coming requests for new analysis all over the place. Yeah, from the US affiliate, from the European region, from people in China, in Australia, in South Korea, because they need pair support in Australia, whatsoever, all kind of different things. Yeah. Great statisticians help you to kind of funnel all that, organize it, basically kind of see, oh, we answered that already, give it back. Oh, we answered something similar. Is that sufficient? Oh, no, we need something new. And we have a couple of other people here that need more or less something same. Do that together, get the data, the analysis done, add context to it, yeah, additional training whatsoever, and then give it to the people and explain it to the people, not just, throw the tables over the fence. Great medical affairs statisticians do exactly that. So, in summary, they help you with strategic understanding, yeah, in terms of competition, in terms of what you can do with your data. They help you to leverage all the data that is there, not just the clinical trial data, the observational data, survey data, indirect comparisons, all these kind of different things, even social media data. And the last is they help you shape the future. Shape the future in terms of that you can work effectively, that you win as a person, as a team, as a department, as a company, and really make sure that patients have the right evidence at the right time, in the right format to make decisions, together with their physicians, together with their payers. That's what it's all about for great medical affairs statisticians. So if you want to work together on that, if you need support for that, then reach out to me and just, send an email to Vermed and say, hey, I would like to have support with that. And then, or reach me on LinkedIn, Alexander Schacht on LinkedIn, and you will get support in terms of these kind of different areas. With that, we are at the end of the webinar. Are there any final questions? Just type them into the chat and I'm happy to answer them. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thanks. The number of people attending is going down. So thanks so much for the discussion for the presentation today, for attending today, and we'll have these kind of webinars on an ongoing basis. So connect with Vermed on LinkedIn to make sure that you get all these kind of different updates. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn to get all these different updates, and then see you either in our next project or at the next webinar. Thanks so much.